Hello, gamers. How are you doing today? I would like to tell you a story about how I got my mount, my unicorn mount. Ha ha ha. So let the story begin.
Our guild, it has the logo of the great white unicorn, and it is a special symbol for me and my guild. And there's an interesting story on how I acquired such a wonderful beast as my mount. And this is a story about the day I befriended a sparkly, opinionated horse and got a unicorn. You know, most folks think acquiring a unicorn involves some grand quest, battling a dragon, or perhaps solving a riddle posed by an ancient, grumpy gnome. For me, Daemabus, it involved a particularly stubborn patch of glitter-infused thistles and a whole lot of exasperation. The glittering thistle incident. Ha ha ha. It was a Tuesday, I believe, or perhaps a Wednesday. Time tends to blur when you spend most of your days arguing with sentient mushrooms. Anyway, I was deep in the whispering weald, trying to coax a new variety of glowing moss to grow on a very uncooperative rock. It was a delicate operation, requiring immense concentration and a good deal of gentle persuasion. Suddenly, a sound ripped through the peaceful forest, a sound I can only describe as a high-pitched, indignant whinny, followed by a rather dramatic snort, then a crash, and then a series of very loud, very sparkly sneezes. By the spirit of the ancient oaks, I muttered, what fresh chaos is this? I followed the trail of shimmering dust and the occasional disgruntled whinny. What I found was, well, it was a sight. There, tangled headfirst in a patch of what I later identified as Sparkle-Burr Thistles, a particularly nasty glitter-producing plant, was a creature of breathtaking beauty. It had a coat like freshly fallen snow, a mane and tail that shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow, and yes, a magnificent spiraling horn on its forehead. A unicorn, and it was stuck. It thrashed, it snorted, it tried to kick its way free, only succeeding in getting more glitter embedded in its pristine white coat. Every movement sent a cloud of iridescent dust into the air, making it sneeze even more dramatically. Whoa there! Easy now, I said, approaching cautiously. You're just making it worse. The unicorn stopped thrashing and looked at me with eyes that seemed to hold both ancient wisdom and profound irritation. It let out another indignant whinny, which I interpreted as, well, don't just stand there, you overgrown shrubbery. Help me. Ha ha ha. The art of unicorn extraction. Now, extracting a creature of myth from a thorny, glitter-spewing bush is not something they teach you in druid school. I tried talking to the thistles, politely asking them to release their captain. They just seemed to shimmer more defiantly. I tried a gentle gust of wind. The unicorn sneezed. Right, I sighed, rolling up my sleeves. This calls for a more hands-on approach. I spent the next hour, perhaps two, carefully, painstakingly untangling the unicorn. It wasn't easy. Every time I got a bit of its mane free, it would twitch, and I'd get a handful of glitter. My hands became sparkly. My beard became sparkly. Even my staff, which usually radiated earthly wisdom, now looked like it had attended a particularly enthusiastic fairy party. The unicorn. whose name I later learned was Lumina, though I often call her Sparkles when she's not listening, was surprisingly vocal throughout the process. She whinnied her disapproval, snorted her impatience, and occasionally nudged me with her nose, as if to say, "Are we quite done yet, mortal?" Finally, with a triumphant tug, the last thistle released its grip. Lumina shook herself, sending a final explosion of glitter into the air. She looked at me, then at her now glitter-dusted coat, then back at me. I braced myself for a swift kick or a disdainful gallop away. A sparkly partnership begins. Instead, she nudged my hand with her head. I wasn't a demanding nudge, but a surprisingly soft one. Then she let out a gentle, almost purring whinny. I think it was her way of saying thank you, though it might have also been, "You're still covered in glitter, you know." From that day on, Lumina simply stayed. She followed me around, sometimes complaining about the lack of pristine meadows, other times offering surprisingly insightful opinions on the best way to cultivate moon petal flowers. She's incredibly fast, surprisingly agile, and has a knack for finding the most inconvenient puddles to splash through, ensuring that I'm always at least a little bit damp. And yes, she still sheds glitter. I've given up trying to get it all out of my robes. It's just part of the Daemabus aesthetic now. So that's how I, Daemabus, acquired my unicorn mount, not with a grand feat of heroism, but with patience, a good deal of thistle pulling, and a willingness to get absolutely covered in sparkle. And honestly, I wouldn't have had it any other way. Ha ha ha.
And that's the tale of how I got my unicorn mount. Sparkles. Ha ha ha. So you kids be good. And if you can be good at it. PvP, that is. Ha ha ha. Y'all have fun now. Bye bye.